The high desert wind doesn't just whistle, it screams. For Silas Croft, a rancher with hands like worn leather, it was just another Tuesday. He was riding to a remote claim to buy a horse, a simple transaction, but the man he met was sweating with a fear that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun. And the barn he was led to. It didn't just smell of hay and animal sweat. It smelled of rust, it smelled of infection, and of a terror so profound it had soaked into the timber itself. What Silas Croft found chained to the wall in that darkness wasn't just a crime, it was the start of a war. The sun was a judgment over the Arizona territory. It bleached the very color from the sky, leaving a pale, accusing glare that hammered the landscape flat. Silas Croft squinted against it, the brim of his hat a thin line of defense. Beneath him, his old mount, Patches, stumbled. It was a small falter, just a hitch in the gelding's gait, but to Silas it felt like a betrayal. Patches had been a good horse, a 20-year partner that had carried him through drought, blizzard, and the loss of his wife, Martha. But time, like the sun, was relentless. The horse was failing. That was why Silas was riding 10 miles north of Coyote Creek, deep into the rocky, snake-infested scrubland that separated the town from the Dragoon foothills. He was heading to the claim of Bartholomew Bart Hodge. Hodge was a whisper of a man. He'd shown up 3 years prior, claiming a small, forgotten parcel of land with a weak spring. He kept to himself, but word got around, as it always does. The man was a ghost in town, buying salt and flour with a downcast gaze. But he had a knack for horses. He'd buy half-broken stock from the Apache traders or lost strays from the range, and within a few months he'd have them ready for a saddle, gentle and strong. Silas needed gentle and strong. He was getting too old for anything else. He'd sent word via the mail rider 2 weeks ago. Hodge had sent back a scribbled note. Got a bay mare. Sound. 5 years. You'll like her. Bring cash. Come alone. The last part was practical. No man wanted witnesses to a cash transaction. But as Silas crested the last ridge and saw Hodge's ranch, a knot of unease tightened in his gut. The place was a ruin. The corral fencing was haphazard. The small adobe house looked like a stiff wind would return it to the dust, and a lean-to shelter had already collapsed. Only the barn stood proud. It was new, built of thick, dark timber, with a solid roof and a heavy, cross-braced door. It was oversized for a property this meager, like a cathedral built next to a shanty. Bart Hodge emerged from the house, wiping his hands on his trousers. He was a small, reedy man, with thinning hair and eyes that never seemed to land on one spot for more than a second. Today, those eyes were wide, and a sheen of sweat covered his face, though the morning was not yet hot. "Mr. Croft," Hodge said, his voice a half-octave too high. "You made good time." "Hodge," Silas nodded, swinging down from Patches. His joints popped in protest. "You said you had a mare." Yes, I do. She's a beauty, right over here." Hodge gestured, not to the imposing barn, but to a small secondary paddock hidden behind the ruined lean-to. "I keep her separate, special." Silas walked over, his eyes scanning. The mare was there, a fine-looking bay with good lines, but his gaze kept drifting to the barn. "Why not in the barn? Sun's going to be hot today." "Oh, she prefers the air," Hodge stammered. "Doesn't like enclosed spaces. A bit spirited, you know." Silas grunted. He ran a hand down the mare's leg. She was sound, as promised. But something was wrong. Hodge was vibrating with a terrible, frantic energy. He was a seller, yes. But this was more than eagerness. This was a raw, primal fear. "I'll need to see your feed," Silas said, turning from the horse. "A horse is only as good as the oats it eats, and I'll need a bill of sale, written and signed." The feed it's just standard. Good quality. Hodge tried to block Silas's path as the rancher began walking toward the main barn. You keep it in the barn, I assume, Silas stated. It wasn't a question. Mr. Croft, please, the mayor is here. We can do the deal, and you can be on your way. I'll even knock $5 off the price. $195. Silas stopped, his gaze finally fixing on the smaller man. Hodge flinched, taking a step back. Hodge, Silas said, his voice low and flat. I'm not buying a horse I can't inspect. I'm not buying from a man who acts like a fox with his tail in a trap. What's in the barn? Nothing, just storage. Tack, my tools, it's a mess. You don't want to go in there. Silas ignored him. He walked to the heavy barn door. It was secured not with a simple latch, but with a thick, new padlock. That's a hell of a lock for tack, Bart, Silas said. Rattlers, Hodge yelped, the excuse sounding absurd even to him. Keeps the rattlers out. And vagrants. Silas looked at the padlock, then at Hodge. The man was trembling, his face pale as milk. Silas's heart, a slow and steady drum, began to beat faster. He wasn't a lawman. He was just a rancher. He could get on patches, ride away, and find another horse. It was not his business. But then, from inside the barn, he heard it. It wasn't a horse. It wasn't a rattler. It was a sound that didn't belong, a faint metallic scrape, followed by a low, desperate sound that was half sob, half whimper. Silas's blood went cold. Open it, he said. Mr. Croft, I am telling you, it's nothing for you to. Open the door, Bart. Now. Silas's voice didn't rise, but the command was absolute. He let his hand drop to the worn holster on his hip. He hadn't drawn the pistol in anger in a decade, but the weight of it was a comfort. Hodge looked at Silas's hand, then at his face. The rancher's expression was carved from stone. With a shaking, palsied hand, Hodge pulled a key from his pocket and fumbled with the lock. It clicked open. Silas pushed the heavy door. It groaned on its hinges, opening a slice of blinding light into the cavernous dark. The smell hit him first. It was wrong. Beneath the expected scents of hay, manure, and old leather, there was a coppery tang of old blood, the sharp, foul odor of human waste, and the sickly sweet smell of infected flesh. His eyes adjusted to the gloom. The barn was mostly empty. A few stalls, some dusty tack. But in the far back corner, in the deepest shadow, something moved. Silas walked forward, his boots echoing on the packed earth. Hodge stayed by the door, whimpering. "Who's there?" Silas called out, though he already knew. He reached the back wall, and he saw her. She was chained to a thick iron ring set into the foundation. The chain was heavy, the kind used for logging, and it was bolted to a thick iron cuff around her ankle. She was sitting on a pile of filthy straw. Her dress was in tatters, her face a grotesque map of purple and black bruises. One eye was swollen shut. Her hair was matted with blood and dirt. But she was alive. As Silas approached, she looked up, and the one eye that could open fixed on him. It was not broken. It was an eye filled with a burning, terrifying fire. Silas Croft had walked into a barn to buy a horse. He had found a nightmare. For a long moment, the only sound was the buzzing of flies and the shallow, ragged breathing of the woman on the floor. Silas stood frozen, his mind struggling to bridge the gap between a Tuesday morning horse trade and the scene of medieval horror before him. He took a step closer. "Ma'am?" The woman flinched, scrambling back against the wall, the chain rattling like a striking snake. "Stay back," she hissed, her voice a dry rasp. "I'm not here to hurt you," Silas said, holding his hands up slowly. "My name is Silas Croft. I came to buy a horse." Behind him, by the door, Bart Hodge finally broke. You see? He wailed, his voice cracking. You see what you've done? You shouldn't have looked. He'll kill me. He'll kill us all. Silas turned, his hand finally closing around the grip of his pistol. He drew it, the sound of the metal clearing, the leather impossibly loud in the barn. He didn't point it. Not yet. Who, Bart? Silas demanded. Who is he? Hodge's face crumpled. You just had to look. Why couldn't you just buy the horse? Bart! Silas roared, and this time his voice was the thunder of a prairie storm. Who did this? Before Hodge could answer, the woman spoke again, her voice stronger this time, laced with contempt. He didn't, she spat. This creature, he's just the jailer. He's too weak to do anything but what he's told. Silas looked from the terrified man at the door to the defiant woman in chains. He was standing in the middle of a story he didn't understand, and every second he stayed, he was becoming a part of it. Who then? Silas asked her, his voice gentle again. Get me out of this, she whispered, the fire in her eye fading slightly, replaced by a wave of exhaustion. Please. He's coming back. He's due. Who is due? Just get me out, she cried. Silas turned back to Hodge. The key, Bart. Give it to me. I can't, Hodge whispered, tears tracking through the grime on his face. He has the only key. The Marshal. Silas froze. The Marshal. Marshal Cunningham. Yes. Marshal Cunningham. Hodge choked on the name. He brings her food. He checks on her. He said if I ever let her go, or if anyone ever found, he'd lynch me from my own barn rafters and burn the place to the ground with me in it. Silas stared, his world tilting. Marshal Cunningham, the law in Coyote Creek, a man Silas had known for 5 years. A hard man, yes, but respected, feared. He was the man who'd tracked the Stevens brothers after they'd robbed the bank. He was the man who organized the Christmas potluck at the town hall, and he was a monster. There must be another key, Silas said, his mind racing. Or a tool, a sledgehammer, an axe. He scanned the barn. No, Hodge shrieked. He took 'em. He took all my heavy tools. Said I didn't need 'em. He did this. He brought her here in the night, 3 weeks ago. Said she was a dangerous criminal, a murderer. Said he was holding her for the U.S. Marshals, secret-like. But the way he looks at her. Hodge shuddered, unable to finish the thought. Silas looked at the woman. Beaten, starved, but not looked at like that. The bruises were from a fist, not a caress. This wasn't that kind of evil. This was something else. This was punishment. He's lying, the woman rasped. My name is Rosalind. Rosalind Hayes. I am not a criminal. I'm a witness. A witness to what? Silas asked, moving to her side, examining the thick iron ring on the wall. It was new. The mortar around it was fresh. Cunningham had planned this. It doesn't matter, she said, her head slumping. He's coming tonight. I heard him tell him. She nodded at Hodge. He said he was bringing the senator to see me. That it would be finished tonight. Senator. The word hung in the dusty air. There was only one senator in this part of the territory. Senator Alistair Payne, the man who owned the copper mine, the water rights, and, it seemed, the marshal. This was no longer a kidnapping. This was a conspiracy. Silas made a decision. It was the kind of decision that changes a life, that draws a line in the sand with a boot heel, separating before from after. Hodge, Silas said, holstering his pistol. Go to your house. Get me a chisel, a crowbar, anything you have. If you have nothing, get me the biggest damn rock you can find. But Mr. Croft, He'll kill you anyway, you fool, Silas snapped. He'll kill you for me seeing her. He'll kill me for seeing her. And he'll kill her. Right now, I'm the only one not planning on killing you. Go." The logic, brutal and clear, hit Hodge. He turned and sprinted from the barn toward his house. Silas knelt beside Rosalind. "Ma'am Rosalind, we're going to get you out, but you need to tell me what's happening." "They killed my husband," she whispered, her good eye closing as a tear escaped. "Daniel. He was a journalist. In St. Louis. He found something. A ledger. Proof of land fraud. Murder. All leading back to Payne. Payne's men killed him. Made it look like a robbery. I ran. I took the ledger. I was trying to get to the governor in Tucson." "And they caught you," Silas finished. "The stage was robbed. An ambush. But it wasn't a robbery. It was Cunningham and his deputies. They were looking for me, and for the book. They killed the driver. They killed the other passengers. I got away in the chaos. I ran into the desert. But I didn't have the book." "You didn't?" A faint, grim smile touched her cracked lips. "No. I got paranoid. I hid it. Before the ambush, back in Coyote Creek." Before Silas could react, Hodge ran back in, clutching a long, rusted piece of rebar and a small blacksmith's hammer. "It's all I have," he panted. "He took my sledge." "It'll do," Silas said, taking the tools. He jammed the rebar into the mortar around the iron ring. "Rosalind, cover your face." He struck the end of the rebar with the hammer. The sound was deafening, a sharp clang that vibrated through the stone. A chip of mortar flew off. "You have to hurry," Hodge whimpered, dancing from foot to foot by the door. "He sometimes comes early, just to check." "Shut up and watch the ridge, Bart," Silas ordered. "You see dust, you yell." Hodge fled to the doorway, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Silas worked with a rancher's steady, powerful rhythm. Clang, clang, clang. The rebar bit deep. He was a strong man, his muscles built from a lifetime of roping cattle and digging post holes, but the ring was set deep. "The ledger," Silas grunted, slamming the hammer again. "Where in Coyote Creek?" "The general store," Rosalind said, wincing at the noise. "I made it to town after the ambush. I was a wreck. I knew they were hunting me. I went to the store. The woman there, Mabel Davies. She was kind. She gave me water. I told her it was my family Bible and papers, that I was afraid of bandits. I asked her to hide it for me, in their safe, until I could send for it." Silas paused, hammer raised. Mabel Davies, the store owner's wife. A quiet, church-going woman. And now she was sitting on a piece of paper that could bring down the most powerful man in Arizona. "She will be in terrible danger," Silas said. "They don't know," Rosalind gasped. "They think I had it. They think I lost it in the desert. That's why he—" She gestured to her bruised face. "That's why Cunningham keeps asking me where it is." Clang! A large chunk of the foundation stone broke free. The ring was loose. "Hodge!" Silas yelled. "Anything?" "Nothing. Just heat shimmer." Silas gave the rebar one last, mighty heave. The iron ring ripped free from the wall in a cascade of dust and stone. The chain slithered to the ground. Rosalind was free. She tried to stand, but her legs, chained for weeks, buckled. She fell against Silas, a low moan of pain escaping her. She was lighter than a sack of feed. Silas lifted her easily into his arms. He looked at the heavy chain still locked to her ankle. "We'll deal with that later." He carried her toward the light of the doorway. Hodge looked at the woman in Silas's arms, his face a mask of pure terror. "What now, Mr. Croft?" Hodge stammered. "You can't just ride into town. Cunningham will see you in a minute. He'll put out a warrant. He'll say you kidnapped his prisoner." Hodge was right. Silas Croft, a man who hadn't had so much as a speeding ticket in his life, was now a fugitive. He couldn't go to his own ranch. Cunningham would look there first. "He's coming tonight," Silas said, thinking aloud. "With pain. They're coming here. When they find you gone and this mess," he gestured to the broken wall, "they'll know." "They'll know I helped," Hodge shrieked. "You can't leave me here. You got to take me with you. Please, Mr. Croft. I'm a witness now too, just like her." Silas looked at the snivelling man with pure disgust. But the coward had a point. Leaving him was a death sentence, and a dead Bart Hodge couldn't tell anyone what Cunningham had done. "All right," Silas said, shifting Rosalind in his arms. "You have 2 good horses, Bart, the mare I came to buy, and your own mount. Go saddle them, fast. Pack food, all you have, and water." "Where are we going?" Silas looked past Hodge to the high, jagged peaks of the Dragoon foothills. "Someplace he won't find us. Someplace I haven't been in 20 years. We're going to my old line shack. Now move." The line shack was a memory, a ghost from Silas's younger, harder years. He and Martha had built it together when they were first starting out, trying to run cattle on a shoestring and a prayer. It was little more than a 1-room timber box, tucked into a high, narrow canyon with a year-round spring. They'd abandoned it when they bought the main ranch down in the valley. He hadn't seen it since Martha died. It was the only place he could think of. It was remote, defensible, and more importantly, it was a place no one, not even Cunningham, would associate with Silas Croft, the comfortable, established rancher. It was a relic of Silas Croft, the young, struggling hopeful. Getting there was an agony. Rosalind, delirious with pain and thirst, was slung over the front of Silas's saddle. He'd taken the bay mare Hodge had offered, a strong, steady animal that moved with a sure-footed grace. Hodge himself was on his own skittish gelding, loaded down with canvas sacks of jerky, hardtack, and 3 canteens of water. Silas had left Patches, his old faithful horse, in Hodge's corral. The journey would have killed him. The thought of it left a bitter, metallic taste in Silas's mouth. "You just left him?" Hodge had stammered, looking at the old horse. "He's earned his rest," Silas had said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Cunningham finds him. He finds him. It'll buy us time." They rode hard, avoiding the main trails, cutting through thorny mesquite and over treacherous rocky slopes. Silas was a master of this land. He knew every wash, every game trail. He led them on a winding, difficult path that would leave little sign. Behind him, Hodge was a disaster. He complained about the heat, the thorns, the pace. He was a horse trader, not a frontiersman. "Mr. Croft, we must rest," he'd whine every 10 minutes. "We rest when we're safe," Silas would call back, never looking over his shoulder. "Keep up, or get left." The threat worked. Hodge's terror of being left for Cunningham was greater than his terror of the wilderness. In his arms, Rosalind drifted in and out of consciousness. In her lucid moments she was sharp, her mind cutting through the fog of her pain. "The ledger," she murmured, her face pressed against Silas's dusty shirt. "You must get it, Mr. Croft. It's not just for Daniel, it's for everyone. Pain, he's a sickness. He's poisoning the territory. He pays the Apache raiders to attack homesteads. Then his land company buys the abandoned claims for pennies. It's all in the book. The dates, the payments, the names." Silas felt a chill, despite the 100-degree heat. This was bigger than he could have imagined. Senator Alistair Payne wasn't just a corrupt politician. He was a warlord, carving out an empire with blood. "We'll get it," Silas said, his voice a low rumble. "First, we get you safe. Then I'll go to town." "No," she whispered, her fingers weakly gripping his arm. "Not you. They'll be looking for you. You were at Hodge's. Cunningham, he'll find your horse. He'll know your name. He'll know who to hunt." She was right. the chipped hoof print on patches. Cunningham was a notorious tracker. He would see it. He would go to Silas's ranch. When he found Silas gone, he'd put 2 and 2 together. Silas Croft would be a wanted man by sundown. Then what? Silas asked. Him, Rosalind whispered, nodding her head back toward Hodge, who was struggling to keep his horse from shying at a lizard. Send him. No one knows he's involved. He can go to Mrs. Davies. He can get the book. Silas considered it. The plan had a certain desperate logic. Hodge was a ghost. No one would connect him to this. But could he be trusted? He's a coward, Mum, Silas said quietly. A coward's liable to run or to talk. He's a coward, yes, Rosalind agreed, her breathing growing shallow. But he's terrified. Of Cunningham. Of pain. Make him more terrified of you. They rode on, climbing higher into the airless foothills. The sun began its long, merciless descent, painting the western sky in hues of blood and fire. Just as dusk was settling, turning the canyons into pools of purple shadow, Silas found the mouth of the narrow canyon. He led the horses up the dry creek bed for a 1/4 mile, the canyon walls rising steeply on either side until they came to the small clearing. The shack was still standing, barely. The roof was half gone, and the door hung on one leather hinge, but the walls were solid, and Silas could hear the faint, beautiful sound of the spring bubbling from the rocks behind it. "We're here," he said. He dismounted, lifting Rosalind down. She was barely conscious. He carried her inside and laid her on the old, rickety cot that, miraculously, was still against the wall. The shack was musty, smelling of pack rats and dust, but it was safe. Hodge stumbled in, dropping the sacks on the floor. "This is it! It's a ruin!" "It's hidden," Silas said, pulling a canteen. He knelt by Rosalind, lifting her head. "Mum, Rosalind, drink." She drank greedily. The water seemed to revive her. Her one good eye opened, sharp and intelligent. Silas turned to Hodge. "Bart, you're going to town?" Hodge's face went white. "What? No, Mr. Croft. Cunningham's there. He'll skin me." "He won't be looking for you," Silas said, his voice flat and cold. He stood up, towering over the smaller man in the cramped shack. "He'll be looking for me. You're invisible. You're going to ride to Coyote Creek. You're going to the general store after dark. You're going to speak to Mrs. Mabel Davies. You're going to tell her the woman from the desert sent you for her family Bible." "My Bible?" Rosalind confirmed from the cot. "That's the code. My family Bible." "She'll give you a package," Silas continued. "You will not open it. You will not look inside it. You will put it in your saddlebag, and you will ride back here. You will not stop. You will not talk to anyone. You will not go to the saloon. You will not go to your own ranch. Do you understand me, Bart?" "But what if she says no? What if the marshal's there?" "She won't say no," Silas said. "And if the marshal's there, you turn around, you buy a tin of tobacco, and you leave. Then you ride back here. But you will get that package." "I can't," Hodge whimpered. Silas stepped closer, his face inches from Hodge's. The setting sun cast a red light on his features, making him look like a hanging judge. "You will," Silas said, his voice barely a whisper. "Because if you don't, if you run, if you betray us, Cunningham will be the least of your worries. I will find you, Bart. I will find you, and I will drag you back to that barn and chain you to the wall. Am I clear?" The raw, unadulterated menace in Silas's voice did what no amount of reason could. Hodge, shaking, nodded. Yes, Mr. Croft. Clear. I'll go." "Good. Take your horse. Leave the mare. Leave the food. Just take your canteen." Silas grabbed the man's arm in a grip like a steel trap. "And Bart? You do this right. You help us. You might just live through this. You'll be a free man. You fail, you're a dead one. Now ride." He shoved Hodge toward the door. The man scrambled onto his horse and, without a backward glance, spurred it down the canyon, disappearing into the growing darkness. Silas watched him go, a profound sense of dread settling on him. He had just staked their lives on the courage of a terrified rabbit. He went back inside the shack. The first stars were appearing in the patch of sky, visible through the broken roof. Rosalind was asleep, her breathing shallow but even. Silas found an old, rusted axe head in the corner, and in minutes he'd cut the shackle from her ankle. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall, his rifle across his lap, and began his watch. He didn't know what was happening back at Hodge's barn, but he could imagine it. Cunningham and the senator arriving, the discovery, the cold, reptilian fury. The hunt was on. The moon rose, silvering the canyon. Inside the shack, Silas did not move. He was a man accustomed to waiting. He'd waited for calves to be born, for storms to pass, for grief to fade. Now he waited for a coward to return, or for a killer to arrive. He tended to Rosalind as best he could. The spring water was clean. He tore strips from his own shirt, washing the caked blood from her face and the deep, septic lacerations on her wrists and ankle. She woke once, her good eye finding him in the gloom. "You're a good man, Silas Croft," she murmured. "I'm just a man who was in the wrong barn, ma'am," he replied, his voice rough. "Daniel, my husband, he used to say, 'The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.' You are not doing nothing, Mr. Croft." She drifted back to sleep. The words sat with Silas, heavy and unwelcome. He didn't feel like a good man. He felt like a cornered animal. Miles away, Marshal Cunningham stood in the center of Bart Hodge's barn, the light of a lantern casting grotesque, dancing shadows. The broken foundation stone, the discarded rebar, the faint tracks. It was a story of a rescue, or a betrayal. A second man stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the night sky. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, his silver hair gleaming. Senator Alistair Payne tapped a cigar on his silver case, his face unreadable. "Well, Marshal," Payne said, his voice a smooth, cultured baritone. "This is inconvenient. You assured me the man was spineless." "He is spineless," Cunningham snarled, his professionalism cracking. He was a thick, powerful man with a face like a bulldog and cold, intelligent eyes. Someone made him do this. Someone helped. He knelt by the door, holding the lantern low. "Hodge's horse is gone, and the new bay mare I told him to hold. But this," he pointed, "this is not Hodge's." In the dust was the clear, sharp print of a horse's shoe. A front left shoe, with a distinctive V-shaped chip missing from the outer edge. "I know this print," Cunningham said, his voice low and dangerous. "Silas Croft, his old gelding patches. Croft was here." "Croft?" Payne said, raising an eyebrow. "The rancher? The one who bought the old Miller place? He's a pillar of the community, a quiet man, hardly a rescuer of damsels." "He's a widower," Cunningham said, as if that explained everything. "Sentimental. A fool. He came to buy the mare. Hodge must have panicked, or Croft got curious." Cunningham stood up, dusting off his hands. "Hodge's horse is gone. Croft's is gone. The woman is gone. And Croft's old horse, Patches, is in the corral. Too old for a hard ride. He took the mare." "So, they have a head start," Payne said, his voice bored. "It doesn't matter," Cunningham said. He dispatched one of his 2 deputies. Ride to Croft's ranch. If you find him, shoot him. Claim he resisted arrest. If you find her, bring her back to me, alive. If you find Hodge, just make him disappear. I don't care how." The deputy thundered off into the night. "And you, Marshal?" Payne asked. Cunningham smiled, and it was not a pleasant sight. "Croft is a man of habit. He's not a bandit. He won't ride for the border. He'll go to ground. He'll go somewhere he knows. And I know Silas Croft." He mounted his own horse, a powerful black charger. "He has an old line shack, high in the dragoons. Hasn't used it in years. It's the first place a sentimental fool would think of." "Then what are you waiting for?" Payne asked. "For my other deputy Jenkins to get back from town. I sent him to inquire at the general store. The woman, Rosalind, she was in town for a full day before I caught her. I want to know who she spoke to." Cunningham looked at the broken chains. "I want to know if she told anyone about her damned ledger." Payne lit his cigar, the red glow illuminating his cold eyes. "Find the book, Marshal. The woman is a problem. The book is a disaster." "I'll find it," Cunningham said, "and then I'll find them, and I'll burn that shack to the ground with all three of them inside." The hours ticked by. Silas watched the moon trace its high arc. He must have dozed, his head nodding against the rough timber, because a sound jerked him awake. A horse, stumbling in the creek bed. He was on his feet in an instant, rifle at his shoulder, pointed at the dark opening of the shack. "Hodge?" he called out, his voice sharp. Mr. Croft? It's me. Don't shoot." Bart Hodge slid off his horse, a dark shape against the paler darkness. He was breathing in great, sobbing gasps. "Did you get it?" Silas demanded. Yes, I think so." Hodge fumbled in his saddlebag, his hands shaking so violently he could barely undo the buckle. He pulled out a thick, oilcloth-wrapped package and thrust it at Silas. "What happened?" Silas asked, taking the package. It was heavy. It was a book. "It was just like you said," Hodge panted, leaning against his horse. "I went to the store. It was late. Mr. Davies was closing. I asked for Mrs. Davies. She came out. I said the words. The woman from the desert sent me for her family Bible. And she got pale. She looked at her husband. He tried to stop her. He said, 'Mabel, don't. It's trouble.' But she shushed him. She said, 'The poor woman.' 'Yes, I have it.' She went to the safe and gave it to me. She said, 'God be with you. Tell her, God be with her.'" Hodge finally collapsed, sliding down the side of his horse to sit on the ground. "But Mr. Croft, there was someone else, a man, a deputy. Jenkins, H, was just standing across the street, watching the store. He saw me go in. He saw me come out. He saw me. He knows me." Silas's blood ran cold. "Did he follow you?" "I don't know. I rode as fast as I could. I took the long way, through the arroyo, like you said. I don't think so. But he saw me, Mr. Croft. He'll tell Cunningham. They'll know I'm with you." Hodge was right. The moment Jenkins reported back, Cunningham would know his jailer had switched sides. He would know they had the ledger. And Cunningham, who already suspected Silas, would know exactly where he'd gone. "He's coming," Silas said, the words feeling like stones in his mouth. "He's coming now." He looked at the package in his hands, the proof, the reason for all this death and pain. "What do we do?" Hodge wept. Silas looked at the woman sleeping on the cot, her breathing still shallow. He looked at the trembling coward at his feet, and he looked at the single narrow entrance to the canyon. "We stop running," Silas said. He checked the load in his rifle. "We make a stand. Here." The pre-dawn light was a weak, grey watercolor. It was just enough to see by. "Rosalind," Silas said, gently shaking her awake. "Ma'am, you need to wake up." Her good eye snapped open, instantly alert. The first thing she saw was the oilcloth package in his hands. "He got it?" she breathed, pushing herself up on one elbow. "Hodge, he did it?" "He did," Silas said. He handed her the package. With trembling fingers, she untied the string. Inside was a simple, leather-bound accounts ledger. She opened it, and her fingers, bruised and broken, traced the neat columns of script inside. "It's all here," she whispered, a tear of not sadness but vindication rolling down her cheek. Daniel's handwriting, the dates, the payments to the raiders, the wire transfers from Senator Payne's bank, it's all here. "Good," Silas said, "because the man who wants it is on his way." The news hit her like a physical blow, but she didn't panic. The fire was back in her eye. "How do you know?" "Hodge was seen," Silas explained, moving to the door of the shack, peering out into the twilight. "A deputy, Jenkins. He was watching the store. He'll have reported to Cunningham. Cunningham already knows I was at Hodge's. He knows me. He knows this place. He's coming." From the floor, where he'd been curled in a ball, Hodge let out a low moan. "We're all dead. He'll come in here with a dozen men. They'll shoot us like rats in a trap." "He's right," Rosalind said, her voice hard. She clutched the ledger to her chest. "This canyon, it's a dead end, a tomb." "It's a funnel," Silas corrected her, his voice quiet, calm. He was in his element now. This was not a drawing room. This was a problem of geography, a problem he could solve. He can only come at us from one direction, from the creek bed. The walls are too steep to climb, not without ropes. "But he'll have guns, he'll have deputies," Rosalind insisted. "He'll have deputies," Silas agreed. "But we have this." He patted the ledger. "He doesn't just want us dead, Mum. He wants this book. If he comes in shooting, he risks hitting the book. Burning it. He'll try to talk first. He'll try to get us to surrender. And if we don't, then he'll come in. But he'll come in careful. He wants the book intact." Silas looked at Hodge. "Bart, get up." "I can't. Get up!" Silas grabbed the man's collar and hauled him to his feet. "You're going to take your horse. You're going to ride about 20 yards down the canyon. You're going to find a thicket of scrub oak. You're going to tie your horse there, where it can't be seen. Then you're going to find the biggest rock you can, and you're going to hide behind it. You have a pistol. A small one, in my bag. Get it. When they ride into the canyon, you are to do nothing. You understand? You don't shoot. You don't breathe. You wait. When you hear me fire, you fire. You aim for the horses. Not the men. The horses. Can you do that, Bart?" The plan, the simple, direct order, seemed to focus Hodge. He nodded, his eyes still wide with terror, but he was listening. "The horses. Yes, I can do that." "Good, don't shoot me." Silas turned to Rosalind. "Mum, can you walk?" "I can," she said, grimly, getting to her feet. She was unsteady, but she was standing. "Take this." Silas handed her his own pistol, the Colt he'd carried for 20 years. "You stay in the shack. The walls are thick. You'll be safe from stray shots. If a man gets past me, and he comes in that door, you shoot him. Don't hesitate." She took the heavy pistol, her hand surprisingly steady. "I understand, Mr. Croft." "And the ledger?" he asked. She looked at the book, the last, lingering legacy of her husband. She clutched it for a long second. Then she walked to the spring that bubbled from the rock at the back of the shack. The spring had carved a small, deep fissure in the rock. She wedged the ledger deep inside the fissure, hidden by shadow and a tangle of ferns. "It's safe," she said. "Safe from fire, safe from bullets. They'll have to get through us to get it." Silas nodded, a deep and profound respect for this woman blooming in his chest. "Good." He checked his rifle, A Winchester. He had a full magazine and a box of 20 extra cartridges in his pocket. He was a good shot. He wasn't a gunfighter, but he could hit a running coyote at 200 yards. He didn't need to be fast. He just needed to be right. He took up his position in the rocks at the mouth of the shack, where he had a clear view of the canyon floor. Hodge scurried off to his position. Rosalind retreated into the dark of the shack, and then they waited. The sun came up. The grey light turned to gold. The heat began to build. The canyon became an oven. And then Silas heard it, the sound of shod horses on stone. Not one, not two, at least 3. They were coming. A moment later, 3 riders appeared at the mouth of the canyon, walking their horses slow. Marshal Cunningham was in the lead. To his right was Deputy Jenkins, the man who had seen Hodge. To his left, Silas's blood froze. It was Senator Alistair Payne. He was here. The man himself, dressed in a fine black trail coat, riding a magnificent grey stallion. He looked as if he were on a Sunday hunt, not a mission of murder. They stopped, 100 yards from the shack. "Silas Croft!" Cunningham's voice boomed, echoing off the canyon walls. "You are harboring a fugitive and a murderer. You are an accessory to the assault of a peace officer. Throw down your weapons and come out." Silas stayed silent. His rifle was sighted on the center of Cunningham's chest. "He's in there, Marshal," Jenkins said, his voice nervous. "That's Hodge's horse, tied in the scrub." Payne raised a hand. "Marshal, please. Let me." The senator urged his horse forward a few paces. "Mr. Croft, this is Senator Payne. I believe there has been a profound misunderstanding. We are not here to harm you. We are here for the woman, Rosalind Hayes. She is unwell. She is a danger to herself and others." "She looks fine to me," Silas shouted back, his voice surprisingly strong. This gave them a pause. They knew he was alive. They knew he was armed. "Mr. Croft," Payne tried again, "and we are here for the package she stole, a private accounts book. It is of no value to anyone but me. Return the book and the woman, and I will see to it that you are not charged. You have my word as a senator." "Your word?" Silas yelled. "The same word you gave the homesteaders you had murdered. The same word you gave Daniel Hayes before you killed him." There was a heavy silence. The pretense was over. Payne's face, even at this distance, darkened. He looked at Cunningham. "Marshal, retrieve my property." "Croft!" Cunningham bellowed. "This is your last chance. Come out or we come in, and we will burn you out." "Come on then," Silas roared. Cunningham sneered. "Fool." He dismounted. "Jenkins, you're with me. We'll go in on foot. Stay low. Shoot anything that moves. Senator, I suggest you stay back." "Of course, Marshal," Payne said, pulling his horse back. Cunningham and Jenkins, rifles in hand, began to advance, using the rocks of the creek bed for cover. Silas waited. He let them come, let them get closer. They were 50 yards out. 40. He put his sights on Cunningham. But at the last second, he shifted his aim. He fired. The shot was deafening. It was not aimed at Cunningham. It was aimed at the rock just above his head. A spray of stone chips exploded, striking the marshal in the face. Cunningham cried out, stumbling back, clutching his eyes. "He's in the rocks! By the shack!" Jenkins panicked. He stood up from his cover and fired 3 wild shots at the shack. Ping! Ping! The bullets whined off the stone. "Fire, Bart!" Silas screamed. "Fire now!" Down the canyon, a small pop echoed, and then another. Hodge was firing his pistol. Jenkins's horse, a high-strung chestnut, screamed as a bullet grazed its flank. It reared, eyes wide, and bolted, thundering back down the canyon past a stunned Senator Payne. Cunningham's horse and Payne's horse, spooked by the gunfire and the fleeing animal, began to buck and pull. "Get the horses!" Cunningham screamed at Jenkins, wiping blood from a cut on his cheek. Jenkins, a fool, turned and ran back toward the horses. He was in the open. Silas didn't hesitate. He took aim. He fired one shot. Jenkins crumpled to the ground, his rifle clattering on the stones. He didn't move. "No!" Cunningham screamed, a sound of pure rage. He raised his own rifle and fired at Silas's position. The bullet struck the rock Silas was hiding behind, sending a painful jolt up his arm. Silas ducked. "He's pinned!" Cunningham yelled to Payne, who was fighting to control his mount. "Senator, get out of the canyon! Get back to town! Bring more men! Bring dynamite!" "I am not leaving!" Payne roared, drawing his own pistol, a beautiful pearl-handled revolver. "I want that book!" Payne spurred his horse, not away but forward. He was charging the shack, firing his pistol wildly. It was a brave, foolish, arrogant move. "Silas!" Rosalind screamed from inside the shack. Silas saw him coming. He saw Cunningham, also, break cover, running toward the shack from a different angle. They were flanking him. It was chaos. Senator Payne, in a fit of rage, charged his stallion directly at the shack, firing wildly. Marshal Cunningham used the insane charge as cover, advancing on foot from the rocks. Trapped, Silas made a split-second choice. He shot Payne's horse. The animal collapsed, throwing the senator and breaking his leg. But the move cost Silas. Cunningham was suddenly at the shack's doorway, rifle raised. "Got you!" he snarled. Silas dove inside just as Cunningham fired, the bullet tearing through the empty space. Silas's own rifle skittered away. Cunningham stepped into the gloom, a massive silhouette, leveling his gun for the killing shot. "It's over, Croft," he sneered. "No," a voice said. It was Rosalind. She stood steady, holding Silas's heavy Colt. Before Cunningham could react, she pulled the trigger. The explosion was deafening. The marshal looked down at his chest, stunned, and fell dead. Outside, the fight was over. Silas confronted the whimpering, wounded Payne. He raised his rifle, tempted to end it, but Rosalind stopped him. "Don't become him," she pleaded. "We expose him. We don't murder him." Silas lowered his rifle. They would take Payne and the ledger to Tucson. Defeated, Payne agreed to confess. The ride back to Coyote Creek was a grim procession. Silas led the party. Rosalind, a terrified Hodge, the wounded Senator Payne, and Marshal Cunningham's body, directly to the center of town. Before a stunned crowd, Silas publicly accused Payne, holding the ledger aloft as proof of his widespread murder and fraud. The confrontation drew a U.S. Marshal named Daniels, who was passing through. Daniels reviewed the ledger. His authority was absolute. After hearing Rosalind's testimony and Bart Hodges' final, brave corroboration, he arrested Senator Payne. Payne's empire was over. Rosalind recovered at Silas's ranch. Weeks later, healed and her justice won, she took a stagecoach to San Francisco. She and Silas shared a final, quiet goodbye, a deep, unspoken respect between them. Silas watched the stagecoach disappear, then turned his horse toward home, a man who had only wanted a horse but had delivered a reckoning. The Wild West wasn't just about cowboys and outlaws. It was about everyday people forced to make impossible choices. Silas Croft went looking for a horse, but he found his courage. Rosalind Hayes lost her husband, but she found justice. This story, based on the brutal realities of the untamed frontier, is a reminder that the darkest evils are often hidden right in plain sight, protected by a badge or a fancy suit. And sometimes it just takes one good person to stop, to look, and to refuse to do nothing. If this story of grit, survival, and real-world justice moved you, please show your support. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who loves a powerful story. And be sure to subscribe to the channel for more true-life dramas. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for listening.